is footage capturing an ordinary workday scene at the casting workshop of the Tanha steel plant in Vietnam City, Yunnan Province, China. Perhaps the workers working at that moment never expected that in just a moment, an incident would suddenly strike, turning their originally smooth work shift into a horrifying tragedy. In just a brief moment, molten steel with temperatures reaching up to 1,500 degrees Celsius violently burst out from the 30-ton steel ladle like a tsunami, sweeping away everything in its path and rushing straight toward the meeting room. This terrifying scene forever changed the fate of the people inside that workshop. What will become of them? Let's join Khan Ha in uncovering the mystery of the story. 32 workers were drenched in 1,500 degrees Celsius molten steel, a disaster at a Chinese steel company. And as usual, before getting into the main content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support our team. Thank you all. 5 a.m., April 18, 2007, in Wandon village outside Viet Linh City, Yunnan Province. In the chilly morning air, the small village was gradually waking up to its daily rhythm. The man hurriedly prepared for his shift at the Tanha steel plant, while the woman busied herself with farm work and livestock. Trong Phuc Tuong, a day shift worker, slowly put on his faded protective gear after years of work. He bent down, hastily ate his breakfast bowl of rice, while his eyes remained fixed on the lunchbox from Paradise Life. Outside in the yard, his wife was diligently milking the cow. As he tightened his shoelaces, he called out to her, "Hurry up with the milking. After my shift, I'll bike over to sell the milk for you." His voice was gentle, but each word carried a hint of worry. Their eldest son had just passed the university entrance exam, and the husband had a small house in the city. They had no other choice but to work tirelessly day and night. Not far away, Tiu Fong, a fellow villager, was also busily preparing for the workday. Unlike Trong Phuc Tuong, Tiu Fong didn't have a bicycle, so every morning he had to walk over 2 kilometers to the plant. The bicycle he and his wife longed for remained a distant dream, because the money saved each month had to be prioritized for more essential things. His lunch today was just vegetables and tofu, but he didn't, because tomorrow was the last day of the 100-day safe production campaign. The bonus money after this campaign was enough for him to realize his small dream: to have a bicycle so the couple would have less hardship on their livelihood journey. Trong Phuc Tuong and Tiu Fong, along with hundreds of other workers, walked up the path leading to the plant, merging into the stream of people heading to the workshop in the faint light of the early morning. The high-rise buildings of Viet Linh City appeared faintly on the horizon, close enough to see clearly but as distant as their own dreams of changing their lives. 7:40 a.m., in the workshop meeting room, Trong Phuc Tuong, Tiu Fong, and 2 other workers sat together at the meeting table, preparing to hear the work handover from night shift team leader Wang Trin Nong to Luan Hoi, who held the position of day shift team leader. Above them, giant ladles containing tens of tons of molten steel were slowly lowering along the conveyor. The sound of clashing metal echoed everywhere, drowning out the workers' voices, forcing them to speak loudly to be heard clearly. The atmosphere in the meeting room, though familiar, felt extremely stifling, as if signaling something ominous was quietly approaching. 7:45 a.m., while Luan Hoi was reminding everyone about work procedures, Wang Trin Nong suddenly paused. He realized he had left an important tool at the nearby control panel. Not wanting to waste time, Wang Trin Nong immediately left the meeting room and quickly walked toward the control panel, a few meters away. But just seconds after he left, a piercing sound suddenly rang out, shattering the familiar noise of the workshop. It was the screeching sound from the crane cable. In an extremely brief moment, the cable snapped in half, causing the ladle containing tens of tons of molten steel to crash to the ground at a dizzying speed. Wang Trin Nong turned around, his eyes panicked as he realized the emergency situation. Without time to think, he shouted with all his strength, "Run fast!" The desperate warning rang out, but there was no longer enough time to save anything. Just seconds later, an earth-shattering explosion erupted from behind Yang Ting-Nan. The steel ladle fell to the ground and exploded immediately, creating a terrifying heat wave that spread throughout the workshop. The blast's pressure threw Yang Ting-Nan, who was trying to escape, burning the clothes on his body. Despite his back being severely burned by the sweeping heat wave, he did not stop. Smoke and flames billowed everywhere as he tried to engulf the entire workshop in a sea of red-hot fire. When he reached the workshop door, Nam Ting Nam collapsed to the ground. With no other choice, he had to roll continuously to extinguish the flames engulfing his clothes. Breathing heavily, his skin stinging from the burns, but Nam Ting Nam knew this was not the time to falter. At all costs, he had to escape from here. But when he turned his head, a horrifying scene immediately struck Nam Ting Nam's eyes. Amid the harsh morning sunlight, molten steel splattered everywhere. The blinding flashes made it impossible for him to see clearly what was happening inside the workshop. But Yang Ting Nan knew that the fate of his colleagues, like Zhang Fuchang, Xiao Fan and Lu and Wei, were gradually being buried in a sea of red-hot steel. Can you imagine how terrifying the scene inside the workshop was? Those trapped workers had to face what was in that horrific nightmare. Just as the steel ladle fell, Mr. Li, a worker at the vacuum steel furnace, was descending the stairs. A strange sound from the other side of the furnace made him pause and turn to check it out to ensure everything was still okay. That moment of hesitation saved his life, because immediately after, an earth-shattering explosion rang out, tearing through all space. Mr. Li looked up and saw white smoke billowing high before the flames erupted violently. In an instant, he felt the terrifying heat gradually spreading throughout the workshop. When he looked down, Mr. Li seemed unable to believe his eyes. From the east, swirling molten steel surged out, swallowing everything in its path. Just about 5 meters from the steel flow was the meeting room, where 32 workers had gathered to discuss work. What was more frightening was that the meeting room door directly faced the direction of the oncoming molten steel. During its fall, the steel ladle collided hard with a truck, causing the steel flow to surge straight for the meeting room door. 30 tons of molten steel, with temperatures reaching 1,500 degrees Celsius, quickly shattered the thick iron door. Almost immediately, the hot steel flooded into the meeting room through the main door and the small windows around it. The workers standing near the door had no chance to escape. The hot steel flowed through them far away, even their cries for help were swallowed up. The temperature of the molten steel at that time far exceeded that of volcanic lava, causing everything in the room to be destroyed in an instant. The chance of survival for those workers was almost zero. The meeting room had only one exit, the main door, but this path was completely blocked by the molten steel. The iron-barred windows were too narrow, impossible to open, and only sufficient to look outside. Inside the meeting room, the rolling steel flow rose high, burning everything. More heartbreakingly, the surviving workers did not sink completely but directly collapsed on the surface of the red-hot wave. In the suffocating atmosphere, Ship Captain Lu and Wei was the first to remain calm enough to act. With a strong survival instinct, he turned and rushed for the small window frame in the corner of the room, the only door leading to hope of escape. While the other workers had not yet regained their composure in the face of the impending tragedy, Lu and Wei used all his strength to climb up to the window frame. Truly, the window was made of thick iron and had a very narrow size, just enough for one person to squeeze through. In the panic, Lu and Wei tried his best to crawl out. But just as he got half his body through the window frame, the molten steel flow surged like a fierce wave. The terrifying temperature quickly heated and deformed the iron frame. It tightened around Lu and Hui's body, giving him no chance to continue escaping. Behind him, the red-hot steel flow was swirling toward him, drowning all last hopes of survival. From the stairs of the vacuum steel furnace, Mr. Li stood frozen in horror at the scene, unable to do anything to help the victims. In the final moment, the image of Lu Anli trapped in the window frame and covered by molten steel was deeply imprinted in his mind, like an obsession that would never fade. Unable to endure any longer, Mr. Li turned and ran away. The Jing factory at that moment was no different from a sea of lava, where the fate of 32 unfortunate people was forever submerged in the wrath of the brutal steel flow. Within an hour after that, firefighters, ambulance crews, and police swarmed to the accident scene. With a trembling body and dazed eyes, Nam Chengnan tried to recount to the rescue team the horrific events that had just occurred. That nightmare remained deeply etched in his mind with indelible marks. Medical personnel immediately checked the condition of the lucky survivors. Yang Chengnan suffered burns on his legs and back. As for Mr. Lee, who stood on the stairs witnessing the entire tragedy, he only sustained minor injuries from the heatwave. But facing the molten and ferocious steel flow, even the most experienced firefighters became helpless. They couldn't use water to cool it because water contacting molten steel would cause a massive explosion, potentially worsening the situation. The firefighters were forced to wait for the steel flow to cool down somewhat before starting to spray water for cooling. It wasn't until midday, nearly 5 hours after the accident, that they could access the scene. However, what remained inside the workshop left everyone almost speechless. Mr. Wong was a night shift worker who luckily escaped because his shift had ended before the accident occurred. Seeing the rescue team begin their work, he could only bow his head and clench his fists in silence. They used plastic bags to collect the fragmented bone pieces left in the solidified steel mass. Since human bodies are lighter than molten steel, the bodies of the unfortunate workers all floated to the surface with the directly contacted parts completely melting. Dark red bone fragments, so small they were no more than 1 centimeter, were scattered across the surface of the solidified steel. That was all that remained of the 31 workers present in the meeting room at that time. Inside the room, the scene was even more tragic. The 31 bodies were burned to the point of sticking together as an inseparable, fused mass. The metal lockers placed against the wall also became warped and deformed from being penetrated by molten steel. The lunch boxes the workers brought had merged together, with no remaining traces to distinguish them. Near the window, which had once been the only hope for escape, only the upper half of the body and some recognizable flesh of the day shift team leader Lu Anhui remained, still trapped there. The window was completely heated and deformed, serving as a painful testament to what had transpired. The news quickly spread to Hangton Village, Tiling City. On the afternoon of April 18, the Tonka workers returned to the village carrying the heartbreaking story. When she heard the accident occurred in the workshop where Zhang Fucheng worked, his wife initially didn't think things were so serious, since 2 years ago he had suffered minor burns on his leg during work. That day she came to pick up her Tonka husband and had great difficulty recognizing him among the workers whose faces were blackened by coal dust, until one of them smiled, revealing his distinctive white teeth. She then recognized it was her husband, Zhang Fucheng. But this time, everything was different. The returning workers recounted that the victims' bodies had been completely melted. With no way left to distinguish them, Zhang Fucheng's wife sat in silence, her eyes lifeless as she realized she would no longer see the familiar sight of her husband cycling to work every morning. In another home, Xiao Feng's wife received the news at the same time. Her husband, who had once hoped to get a bicycle to make his daily commute less arduous, had now passed away forever. Just yesterday, the couple had still been discussing their future together, about the small joy of owning a new bicycle. But that seemingly modest dream had completely vanished, and Xiao Feng would never have the chance to use the bicycle he had always dreamed of. Sad stories spread throughout Hungdun village like this. The pain of loss here is irreplaceable. Tragedy struck like an overwhelmingly brutal blow. After the rescue team completed their work at the scene, they confirmed that all 32 workers in the meeting room had died, with the youngest being only 19 years old. The pain lies not only in the number but also in the horrifying fact that the victims' bodies were completely incinerated by molten steel, making identification impossible for conventional methods. The authorities were forced to use DNA technology to identify each person. The people who were day and night attached to every piece of land and blade of grass in Hungdun village are now only known by codes. Trong Put Thuong, a worker who stood in front of the steel furnace for 12 hours every day, a father who once cherished the dream of his son going to university, is now only referred to by the cold code, number 15. Din K-den, the person who laid the foundation for the Qing steel plant, who had worked in every position in the steel smelting workshop, is also just number 19. Workers who once had names, ages, and meaningful life stories are now all reduced to ashes and a soulless list. 3 days after the accident, on April 21st, the State Administration of Work Safety established a special investigation team. The Chinese government immediately declared this the most serious accident in the steel industry. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, they pledged to conduct a thorough investigation to clarify the cause and ensure that a similar tragedy would not happen again. The Qing steel plant was seen as a symbol of the economic revival of Hongdun village. Previously, the plant had been on the brink of bankruptcy. But fortunately, it was acquired by Mr. Cao Feng in 1995. Within just 1 year, he turned it into a profitable enterprise, with profits exceeding 7 million yuan in 1996. The plant was not only the livelihood for most of the villages of Hongdun, but also their indescribable pride. The 30-ton steel smelting furnace and casting workshop project of Chang, where the accident occurred, commenced on September 25, 2005. And went into operation just 1 year later, with high productivity and strict discipline. The plant often proudly promoted its safety standards. Safety first. Notably, the tragedy occurred on the 99th day of the 100-day safe production campaign, just 1 day away from the campaign's end. According to regulations, if the 100-day safe production was hit, each worker would receive a bonus of up to 10,000 yuan, a substantial amount for those with monthly incomes of 1,000 to 2,000 yuan. Not only that, the Qing steel plant was famous for its strict safety management system. Anyone violating labor regulations here was fined 200 to 300 yuan, a significant sum for the workers, which is precisely why everyone was extremely cautious in their daily production operations. So why did a professionally managed plant, with such tight and effective safety measures, was this the place that buried 32 innocent lives in just a few short minutes? These questions are not only the focus of the investigation, but also a persistent pain for the people of Wanda village, and all those who were once associated with the Tanha steel plant. After a thorough review process, the investigation team has determined the initial cause of the tragedy at the Tanha steel plant. The first and most obvious cause was the unreasonable workshop design. The meeting room where 32 workers met the disaster was not originally built for meeting purposes. Initially, it was a tool workshop located 5 meters from the casting pit. This location was chosen because workers at the casting pit frequently needed to retrieve tools or repair equipment. So placing the workshop nearby saved considerable time and effort. However, when space was needed for post-shift meetings, the plant management did not hesitate to add a table to the tool workshop, turning it into a makeshift meeting place despite safety risks. Such space utilization was not only poorly planned but also seriously violated labor safety rules, as the casting pit emitted enormous heat and radiation, which could be dangerous with prolonged exposure. Work tools here not only became deformed due to heat but also lost accuracy, affecting operational efficiency. Worse, if molten steel splashed out, nearby workers could suffer severe burns or even death. Additionally, the vacuum steel furnace and casting pit were both placed directly under the path of the same crane. This meant that when workers were meeting in the meeting room, they were standing right under the crane's operating area, a major danger lurking at any moment. Another cause of the tragedy was shortcomings in technical design and plant operation procedures. The investigation team discovered that the crane used in the plant was a standard type, not the specialized kind for hazardous work environments. T withstand high temperatures and wasn't. A properly standardized specialized crane would detect issues like jamming or loss of control early, thereby preventing heartbreaking accidents like the steel ladle drop to some extent. But ordinary cranes lack these features, making the tragedy almost unavoidable. However, the problem didn't stop there. The investigation process revealed that the crane operators of the plant were not properly trained, and also lacked professional certification. They lacked knowledge of maintenance, safety inspections, and especially weren't equipped with emergency response skills. The underlying cause of this laxity lay in the Tanha plant management's decision to hire non-specialized labor to save costs. Perhaps no one expected that those cut costs would become a blood debt. A debt that the plant had to pay with the lives of 32 people. The innocent workers never had the chance to return home to reunite with their families. With an unsafe operating system from design to personnel, accidents seemed only a matter of time. A few days later, the official investigation results were announced. The Tonha steel plant, once the pride of Wandon village, now became the site concealing an indelible tragedy. After the horrific accident, local authorities decided to demolish the entire plant and production line for reconstruction. But when compensation payments were made, questions about the real cause of this tragedy seemed to fade in many people's minds. The wife of Trom Phuk Tuong, the dedicated worker who died in the meeting room that day, couldn't hide her hesitation when approached by reporters. She said she learned of her husband's death on that fateful morning from her daughter, who worked in the administrative department of the Tonha plant. Although she received full compensation, she frankly shared, "No amount of money can bring back my husband, the father of my children." When reporters tried to ask more, Trom Phuk Tuong's daughter suddenly appeared with angry eyes and immediately demanded they leave. A female worker who once worked in the personnel department, now having to shoulder the entire family after her father's death. "Do you want to rub salt in my family?" For Zhang Fusheng's wife, her daughter became the most important support after the great loss. She handled everything in place of her father, helping the family through the most difficult period. In her eyes, she was not only a filial child but also a true factory worker. Someone who understood responsibility and was ready to face challenges. The future of the Xiqing factory was not any brighter. After the accident, the factory once announced the recruitment of new workers with promises to improve working conditions. But just a few days later, the factory was forced to close for reorganization and investigation. This left all the villagers of Hankton unemployed. For them, working at the factory was not only their main source of income but also an indispensable part of their lives. But that dependence had become an invisible cage, trapping the entire village in an inescapable spiral. Public opinion focused attention on the incident, pushing local authorities to take action. On January 22, 2008, the State Council Information Office announced the investigation. Sang Peng, director of the Xiqing factory, was prosecuted for management violations. By February 26, 2011, after more than 4 years of investigation and trial, the court sentenced two safety inspectors, Wang Zhendong and Cheng Weiguo, to 3 years in prison for dereliction of duty causing serious consequence. Time passed, but the wounds from the accident had not yet healed. The Xiqing factory eventually resumed operations, but the former bustling atmosphere had been replaced by an unusual silence. Yang Chenghun, a survivor of the tragedy, still occasionally visited the factory. The noise of the production line now only echoed in memory. In a corner of the Qing factory yard, a few old bicycles of the workers still lay there. Among them was Zhang Fusheng's bicycle. Many times his wife told their son to take the bike back, but he shook his head, his gaze distant. "No need, Dad is still there." The bicycle lay silently in a corner of the factory, as evidence of the lingering pain. A way of remembering unfinished dreams and innocent lives buried in the cold steel. The accident also served as a warning about the importance of complying with safety regulations and the responsibility of enterprises in protecting workers. Do not let small savings become a blood debt paid with human lives. And with that, thank you everyone for listening to today's true story. Before we say goodbye, don't forget to leave a like, a share, and subscribe to the channel to support our team, as well as to follow more captivating stories to come. For now, goodbye and see you next time.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.